He was 72, army tough, in better shape than men half his age. What none of us knew, what he had hidden even from his wife, was that a doctor had just found something wrong with his heart, and that the pill that would have protected it was sitting on the roof of his car in the parking lot. He told me he would be fine. He believed it. He had 50 years of proof that he was right, and no idea that the proof had quietly expired. The pill bottle sat on the roof of his car for 9 hours. That is the image I cannot get out of my head months later. A little orange prescription bottle standing upright on the roof of a parked sedan in the trailhead lot, catching the sun all morning and all afternoon while the man it belonged to walked deeper and deeper into the one place on earth those pills were meant to protect him from. He had set it up there while he laced his boots, the way you set your coffee on the roof while you dig for your keys, and then he shouldered his pack and walked to the trailhead and never thought about it again. It was still there at dusk. It was the last thing of his the parking lot gave back easy. Let me tell you about the old man in the olive shirt and the orange cap. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite story. It is built from real heat, real hearts, and the real quiet way that pride kills good men in this canyon every summer. But the man at the center of it is an invention, assembled from every strong, stubborn, honorable person I have watched refuse help right up until help was the only thing left. No real person is named here. I'm going to call him Walt, because he deserves a name and not a case number. And because by the end of this you are going to wish, the way I still do, that you could have gotten to him in time. Walt was 72, he had been a soldier, and he died of the thing he was most proud of. He was, by any honest measure, in remarkable shape for his age, and that is not a small thing. He stood straight, he had a grip that could still surprise a younger man. He had spent a life in motion, and he carried himself like someone who had earned every bit of the body he was standing in, because he had. 50 years ago, he had carried a heavy pack up worse ground than this. In a war he did not talk about much, and some part of him had never fully come home from the version of himself who could do that. The version who did not stop, did not complain, did not need anyone. For most of a long life, that man had served him well. The canyon is where that man finally got him killed. I learned a little about him later. He had been married 48 years to the same woman. He still brought her coffee in bed. He coached a grandson's baseball team and never missed a game. And he was the man his family called when something broke or something scared them, because he was the one who never let it show. That is the thing about a man like Walt. His strength was not a pose. It was a service he performed for everyone around him, a standing promise that while he stood, no one around him had to be afraid. And a man who has spent 50 years being that for other people does not know how to turn around one day and be the one who is afraid, who is sick, who needs to be carried for once. He did not have the muscle for it. It was the only muscle he never built. Because a few weeks before he ever set foot in Arizona, a doctor a long way from here had told Walt something his body had been trying to tell him for a while. His heart was not the heart of a young soldier anymore. There was a rhythm problem, a weakness, the specific kind of thing that is manageable and survivable and entirely compatible with a long, good life on one condition: that you respect it. The doctor had given him a small daily pill, a beta blocker, a medication whose whole job is to keep an overworked heart from being asked to do more than it can safely do. Take the pill, keep your effort reasonable, be careful in the heat, simple instructions. And Walt heard every one of them the way he had heard a lifetime of people telling him to slow down, which is to say, he filed them under insult. I have thought about what that appointment must have been like for him. A younger doctor, probably, saying careful clinical words to a man who had been storming through life since before that doctor was born. Words like manageable and monitor and take it easy. Words that are meant to reassure and that land on a proud man as a sentence. I do not think Walt heard a treatment plan that day. I think he heard the first official notice that the long, quiet war between him and time was finally being lost, and everything he did afterward, the silence, the skipped pill, the trip, the trail, was not stupidity. It was a man refusing to sign the surrender. I understand it completely. I just cannot forgive what it cost him. He did not tell his wife. That is the part that undoes the people who loved him, and it is the part I want you to sit with, because it is the whole engine of this. He did not tell his wife, and he did not tell his kids, because in his mind telling them was the same as admitting it, and admitting it was the same as becoming, at last, an old man who needed watching. He told his wife he was going for an easy walk to see the big view. He told himself the pills slowed him down, made him foggy, made him less. And on the morning of the hike, standing in the lot, he made the decision that 100 perfectly strong men make every summer. He decided that today, of all days, on the trip he had been looking forward to for months, he did not need it. He set the bottle on the roof, and he left the one thing keeping him safe standing in a parking lot while he went to prove it wrong. His wife had told him that morning to have fun and to drink water and to call her from the top if there was any signal. Ordinary words, the words of 48 years, the small liturgy of a marriage. She did not know she was saying them to a sick man who had hidden his sickness from her. She thought she was worrying about a view. He kissed her, or I have to imagine that he did, and he drove off to the canyon with a secret in his chest, and the answer to it riding on the roof of the car. And neither of them had any way of knowing that the last ordinary morning of their life together had already happened. I met him at the trailhead. I meet everyone at the trailhead in June, because June in this canyon is a season with a body count, and I have learned to read the people who are going to become part of it. I read Walt in about 4 seconds, not because he looked weak, because he looked determined in a way that did not match the hour or the heat or his age. He was starting a hard descent at the wrong time of day with the particular set of the jaw that I have come to dread more than any obvious sign of trouble. The jaw of a man who has already decided and is only walking past you out of politeness. I said what I say, that the heat would be brutal by afternoon, that the way down is the easy part and the climb out is the killer, that there is no shame in a shorter day, and Walt smiled at me, a real smile, not unkind. And he told me he had been Army tough since before I was born, that he had done marches in heat that would drop me where I stood, that he appreciated my concern, but he would be just fine. And here is what I need you to understand about that moment. He was not being arrogant. He believed it. He had 50 years of evidence that he was right, and no way of knowing that the evidence had quietly expired. He was not the first Walt I had met, and he will not be the last. Every summer, this canyon sends me a version of him, a strong older person who has decided that the mountain is a thing to be conquered one more time, rather than respected one more time. And I have learned that they are, in a strange way, the hardest people in the world to turn back. A proud old soldier made his peace with fear a long time ago, and stopped being moved by shame even longer ago than that. And the only thing left that might reach him is the one thing he will never accept, which is the suggestion that he is not who he used to be. I have never found the sentence for that. I watched him walk down, and I wrote down the time, which is a habit I have and hate, and which I have never once been sorry to have when the call finally comes. Let me tell you what was actually happening inside him, because it is the part no amount of toughness can push through. A healthy heart under stress speeds up, works harder, moves more blood to cool the body and feed the muscles. Walt's heart could still try to do that, but it was no longer built to sustain it, and the pill he left on the roof was the very thing that would have kept it from being asked to. Without it, in that heat, on that climb, his heart was going to be told to do exactly the thing it could no longer safely do. And it had no break left. Heat raises the demand, exertion raises the demand, dehydration thickens the blood and raises it further. Every factor in the canyon in June points the same way, toward a heart working harder. And Walt had removed the one thing standing between his heart and that demand. The trail down treated him gently, the way it treats everyone, the way it has to in order to do what it does. He set his old pace, that steady soldier's pace, and it felt wonderful. I have no doubt of that. The air cooled as he dropped. The walls opened into that impossible view. He passed younger people and felt the old satisfaction of it. One of them, a young man coming up as Walt went down, stopped and asked if he wanted to split a bottle of water. The easy kindness strangers trade on a hot trail. Walt thanked him and waved it off. He had his own, he said, and he was fine. And he said the word fine the way he had said it to me at the top, as a door closing rather than a fact. The young man went on up. He would remember that later, the way people remember the last small chance they had to change something they did not know was happening. You cannot save a man who is working that hard to look like he does not need saving. The Grand Canyon is what we call an inverted mountain, a peak you climb by going down first, so that you spend your freshest energy going down and pay every foot of it back in the worst heat of the day. Walt went down strong and certain, deeper than he should have, later than he should have. And somewhere down there, his heart began quietly keeping a tab that his pride could not see, and his medication was not there to pay. The first warnings were small, and they came from inside him, and he did to them exactly what he had done to the doctor and the ranger and his wife. He dismissed them. A tightness he called the pack, a flutter he called the heat, a lightness in his head he called standing up too fast. A younger man might have been frightened by those signals. Walt had spent a lifetime training himself to ignore precisely those signals, to push through them, because pushing through them had always been the whole point, the thing that made him him. The cruelty of it is almost perfect. Everything that had ever made him strong was now a set of instructions for missing the only warnings that could have saved his life. A soldier learns early that pain is information you are allowed to overrule, that the mission does not stop because the body has an opinion about it. It is a genuinely useful thing to know on a battlefield for a year. It is a fatal thing to still believe alone at 72, when the ache in your chest is no longer an obstacle to the mission, but the only messenger your heart has left. Let me ask you something, and I am asking gently, because this one lands close to home for a lot of us. What are you not telling the people who love you? Because telling them would mean admitting you are not as invincible as you have always let them believe. A diagnosis, a pain, a fear, a limit. Tell me in the comments, and you do not have to say what it is, just whether there is one, because Walt is not a story about a reckless man. He is a story about a strong one. And the strong ones are the ones this happens to, because they have spent so long being the person everyone else leans on that they cannot imagine being the person who needs help. He turned around at the bottom the way you have to, and he started up, and the canyon began collecting what he owed it. The sun was overhead now. The walls that had cooled him on the way down were radiating heat back at him from every side. His old pace was gone, and its absence frightened him in a way the descent never had, because that pace was his identity, and he could feel it failing under him. He stopped more often. He told himself it was strategy. His heart, unmedicated and unprotected, was being asked to climb a vertical mile in rising heat, and it was doing its best, and its best was no longer enough, and there was no pill on that trail to lower the demand by even a little. A heart can only be asked for so much for so long. It is a muscle, the most faithful one a person owns, and it will answer every demand you make of it right up until the demand passes what it has left to give, and then it does not negotiate. When a heart in Walt's condition finally reaches the edge of what it can do under that kind of load, the distance between fine and gone is measured in a handful of beats. It happened on a switchback in the shade of a boulder, which is a small mercy. He sat down to rest, the way he had a dozen times on the way up, and this time his body made a decision his will had no vote in. I am not going to describe it in detail because he was a man and not a diagram, and because he deserves better than to have his last minutes narrated for a thumbnail. It was his heart. It was the thing the pill was for. It was quiet, and it was fast, and by the standards of how this canyon takes people, it was merciful, though that word offers nothing to the ones who loved him. A pair of hikers found him. They did everything right. It was already, by then, long past the point where doing everything right could have changed the ending. The ending had been decided in a parking lot, next to a car, beside a bottle he had set down and walked away from. We reached him fast, and it did not matter, and that is a specific kind of grief for the people who do this work, the days when your speed and training and helicopter are all irrelevant because the thing that killed the person happened hours ago and was finished before the first call ever came in. And then there was the other call, the one none of us ever get used to making, to a wife who believed her husband had gone for an easy walk to see a view. She did not know about his heart. She learned that he was gone and that he had been sick in the same conversation, in the same breath from a stranger, in the worst phone call of her life. That is what hiding it bought him. Not strength, just a wife who had to grieve two things at once, the loss of him and the discovery that he had carried this alone rather than let her carry any of it with him. If Walt reminds you of someone, or if he reminds you of yourself, then do the small thing that puts this in front of the next strong person about to hide something that could kill them. Like this video, so it reaches them the day before their hike instead of the day after. Subscribe so you are here for the next one. Not for me, and not for a number on a screen. Do it so that one more proud man somewhere tells his wife the truth and takes the pill and lives to be annoyed by both. Here is the whole of it, the thing I most want you to carry out of this. The strongest people do not die from the things they cannot do. They die from the things they will not admit. Weakness that is spoken out loud gets managed. It gets a pill, a plan, a lighter day, a hand to hold on the way up. Weakness that is hidden gets to grow in the dark, unmedicated and unwatched, until it meets a canyon in June and finishes the job. Walt was not killed by his heart. Hearts like his are managed by ordinary people every single day. He was killed by the distance between how strong he needed everyone to think he was and how much help he actually needed. And that distance is the most dangerous country a proud person can walk into, more dangerous than any trail I guard. The pill bottle sat on the roof of his car for 9 hours. When we finally cleared the lot that night, someone found it, still standing upright, still nearly full, one day's dose short of a life that had measured itself by never needing anyone. I've thought about that bottle more than almost anything else in this job. Everything he needed to survive that day fit in the palm of one hand and cost almost nothing and asked almost nothing of him except the single thing he could not give, which was to admit that he needed it. He left it on the roof because taking it would have meant he was not the man he had always been. And the canyon, which does not care who you were, only what you carried, took him for exactly that. Next time we leave the heat behind and go to the cold water, where strength turns against a person even faster, where the fittest one on the boat is so often the first the river takes. Until then, if there is something you are hiding in order to seem strong, a pain, a diagnosis, a fear, tell one person who loves you before you tell no one, and it tells them for you. The strongest thing a person can do is let themselves be helped. Walt never learned that. I would give a great deal for you to learn it from him instead. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.